This happened about a year ago. I was 32 and really looking forward to camping in the Appalachian Mountains with a few friends. It was meant to be a fun escape from work. I was excited to take pictures of wildlife and enjoy nature. But I've never stopped thinking about what happened there. I remember setting up our camp. It was peaceful at first. We set up our tents and gathered firewood while the sun dipped behind the trees. That first night was normal. We laughed, shared ghost stories, and roasted marshmallows. Then I heard it, rustling sounds from the bushes. I thought it was harmless wildlife. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The air felt heavy. I kept looking around, feeling curious and uneasy. Around midnight I heard something again. My heart raced. It was an echo, a call that mimicked our earlier laughter. I looked at my friends, but they acted like nothing was wrong. A chill ran down my spine. Was it just my imagination? The next evening the atmosphere changed. We were sitting around the campfire again when I caught something out of the corner of my eye. It was a dark figure at the edge of our campsite. I blinked, and it was gone. My gut told me to say something, but I didn't want to worry anyone without proof. Part of me wondered if I was just tired or if my mind was playing tricks. Still, I felt a strong urge to look again. The dawn brought a new layer of unease. We woke up to find our stuff scattered around. Our backpacks were moved, clothes strewn about, and one of my friend's cameras was missing. My stomach dropped. Confusion swept over us. We tried to convince ourselves that it was just the wind, but I knew better. Something or someone had been watching us closely. I didn't say that out loud, but it weighed heavily on my mind. That night, we decided to sit by the fire even longer, hoping to shake off the weirdness. But it didn't help. The forest felt too quiet, too still. I kept hearing that echo again, faint yet persistent, like it was waiting for something. I couldn't help but glance around. My friends chatted away, unaware of what I sensed. Finally, we packed up. We thought leaving would bring back normalcy, yet dread clung to my thoughts. Were we imagining things? What had watched us? As we drove home, I tried to shake it off, but that tension stayed with me. I would wake up in the night feeling like something was still lurking. Then, in the dead of night, I heard it again. A call, distant and eerie. I look around my room now, and still can't shake the feeling that I'm not alone. It haunts me. I replay those moments over and over, the figure at the edge, the rustling in the night, the call that echoed from the darkness. I wonder if that presence followed me back. I wonder if it will ever leave. The days turned into weeks, but I couldn't shake the disquieting feelings from our trip. I avoided the woods, but no matter where I was, echoes of that camping experience lingered in my mind. I found myself jumping at shadows and often glancing over my shoulder, as if the figure from the woods was still there, waiting. One evening, while lying in bed, I decided to dig out my journal. Writing usually helped me process my thoughts. I flipped to the last few entries. Most were mundane, detailing the typical grind of work and daily life. But then I saw it. A few entries back, I jotted down some details about the trip. My handwriting became messy as I recalled finding my friend's camera. We had all needed it to document our experience. But when I flipped to the next page, I saw something I didn't write. A different penmanship. Saw him again. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't remember writing that. I stared at the words, feeling uneasy. I flipped through more pages, but nothing else was there, just a blank section at the back. Chills started creeping down my spine. Who could have added that? I decided to ask my friends if they remembered more about that night, hoping that maybe we had collectively imagined it. I texted them, and we agreed to meet at a cafe. As I waited, I felt a twinge of disbelief. How could we have all brushed off that shadow? When everyone arrived, the chatter felt forced. I took a deep breath and brought it up. "Do you guys remember anything unusual from our camping trip?" They exchanged glances, and I could feel the collective tension. One friend, Sarah, spoke up. "You mean besides the missing stuff? Honestly, I'm just glad to be back in the city." Another friend shrugged and said, "I felt something too, but I thought it was just us being jumpy." That's when David leaned in. "You remember that weird call we heard? The laughing? It sounded like a kid or something." I looked at him wide-eyed. How could he remember that? I thought about the laughter that echoed through the trees, the way it had twisted into something haunting. Yeah, it sounded odd, didn't it? "Yes." Sarah nodded, her voice firm, and it didn't stop even when we tried to ignore it. They were all nodding, and something inside me shifted. A new wave of fear rolled in. Just then, a sudden burst of laughter erupted from a nearby table. It was high-pitched and sing-song. A sickening chill ran through me. It sounded just like the echo from the forest. I glanced out the window and my heart dropped. It was getting dark outside. I suddenly felt trapped. My mind raced with the memories, the figure, the call. Then, just as quickly as the laughter had started, it faded away, leaving only the clatter of cups and chatter behind. Once the meeting ended, I rushed home, my mind swirling. To calm myself, I pulled out my journal again. As I opened it, I steeled myself to reread the words that had unnerved me. That's when I felt it. A cold breath on my neck. I froze. Then everything went dark. When I came to, I was sprawled on the floor beside my desk, the journal open next to me. Confused, I pushed myself up, scanning the room. The curtains were drawn tight, but the digital clock on my bedside table read 2:47 a.m. I had no idea how long I'd been out. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. I remembered the breath on my neck and the darkness that followed. I quickly grabbed my phone, hoping to find some comfort in the light. After a moment, the screen glowed. I took a deep breath and looked around again. I checked my messages. David had texted me twice. "You good? You just left." And, "I'm worried about you." I hesitated, then replied, "I'm fine. Just tired. Let's talk tomorrow." I hoped that would ease his concern. But as I put my phone down, uncertainty crept in again. Had I really just imagined that breath? Maybe it was a trick of my mind, a product of my fear. I glanced at the open journal, still feeling an urge to confront those unsettling words. I picked it up and flipped through the pages again, but nothing had changed. I stared at the line, saw him again, and felt an icy shiver. Suddenly the front door creaked. My heart raced. Was someone in the house? I rose, moving cautiously toward the hallway. I listened, straining for any sound, and then I heard it, a faint rustling coming from the kitchen. I stepped lightly, hoping not to make a noise. As I reached the corner, I peered into the kitchen and saw it, the silhouette of a figure against the window. It was just outside, barely illuminated by the streetlight. I froze. The memories of the camping trip flooded back, shadows darting in the periphery, that echoing laughter. I wanted to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I took a step back, pushing myself against the wall, my back cold against the wood. The figure remained still, and I couldn't tell if it was looking in or not. I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been waiting for me all along. In that moment, time felt like it was stretching thin, teetering on the edge of some enormous revelation I wasn't prepared for. Then suddenly, the figure moved. It turned away and slipped into the darkness of the night. I barely registered this. Adrenaline surged through me. I dashed to the window and peered outside, but there was nothing, just the empty street. My heart thundered in my chest. I struggled to process what just happened. Who was that? Were they connected to my camping trip, and why was I still so terrified? Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the silence. I pulled it out and my heart dropped. A photo had just come through, one from David's message. He had snapped a picture just outside the cafe. It was blurred, but I could make out a shadowy figure in the background. Terror clawed at my throat. That looked familiar. Too familiar. In that instant I knew this was only the beginning. I had to find out more. The next chapter of this fear was about to unfold. I didn't sleep that night. The creeping dread wrapped around me, tight and suffocating. I spent hours pacing my small bedroom, the journal and David's photo weighing heavily on my mind. I flipped through the journal again, searching for some clue or explanation. The entries that had once seemed harmless now felt like a countdown, each word a spiral pulling me closer to the truth. When dawn finally broke, I felt hollow. I needed to talk to David. We had shared something on that camping trip that lingered in both our minds, something we hadn't fully confronted. After a quick shower and a cup of strong coffee, I grabbed my phone and texted him to meet at our usual spot. I needed a friend, right now. 10 minutes later, I pushed open the cafe door. The familiar scent of coffee grounded me momentarily, and I spotted David sitting in the corner looking anxious. His expression lightened as I approached, but there was an undercurrent of concern in his eyes. "Hey," he greeted, standing to hug me. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Funny you say that," I replied, sitting down. "I've been thinking about the camping trip." David frowned. "Me too. I've been trying to forget it." "David, we can't ignore it. I saw something last night. A figure outside my house." He stiffened. "You mean like—" "Yes," I said, cutting him off. "The same one from that night. I'm not imagining it. I got a photo from you." I slid my phone across the table and he took it, eyes narrowing as he examined the blurry image. "I didn't even notice it when I took the picture," he muttered, shaking his head. "What does it mean?" "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it feels like it's come back to haunt us." David shifted uncomfortably, his fingers drumming on the table. "We can't just sit here. We need to find out who or what that is." I wanted to say something reassuring, but I felt that familiar chill creeping over me. "What if it's dangerous?" "Then we'll deal with it together," he said resolutely. We spent the next hour piecing together memories from that camping trip. The laughter, the stories shared around the fire, but also the strange occurrences, the rustling noises in the trees, the feeling of being watched. Each recollection added more weight to my fear. As we finished our coffee, an idea struck me. "What if we go back? To the campsite?" David's eyes widened. "Now? After everything?" "Yes. Maybe we can figure out what happened. Maybe it isn't just a coincidence." "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "If it will help you feel better." We left the cafe, the sun hanging high in the sky, but my heart felt heavy. The thought of returning to that place filled me with dread and hope in equal measure. Then, just as we reached my car, I noticed a flyer attached to my windshield. The bold letters read, "Missing person. Have you seen him?" Below was a picture of a man, the man from my journal. I felt a surge of panic. This wasn't a coincidence. I looked at David, and we exchanged a silent understanding. The truth was closer than I had ever thought. I ripped the flyer off and shoved it into my pocket. As we got in the car, I whispered, "We need to go now." We drove in silence, both of us consumed by questions and shadows from our past. We were heading into something dark, and there was no turning back. The drive to the campsite felt longer than it should have. I could sense David's unease through the tight grip he had on the steering wheel. The trees lining the road grew denser as we approached, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. I tried to focus on the road ahead, but the sight of that flyer kept replaying in my mind. "What if we shouldn't be doing this?" David said, suddenly breaking the silence. His voice trembled slightly. "We need answers," I replied, though my own conviction wavered. We can't let fear stop us. Half an hour later we arrived. The campsite was familiar, yet it felt different. The sunlight barely penetrated the treetops, casting a gloomy shadow over the area. The fire pit where we'd gathered felt colder, and the air was thick with memories I had hoped to leave behind. "Where do we even start?" David asked, stepping out of the car. "Let's check the trail," I suggested, pointing towards a narrow path leading into the woods. "That's where we saw it." He nodded, though hesitation lingered on his face. As we walked, I felt the unease in my stomach turn to something heavier, a tangible weight of dread. At first, the woods were quiet. The chirping of birds and rustling of leaves felt distant, almost muted. I recalled our laughter echoing through these trees back then, the innocence of those moments. But now, it was different. The air felt electric, charged with something I couldn't name. 15 minutes into the trail, I spotted something unusual, a mark carved into a tree. It looked like a symbol I recognized from my journal but had dismissed, thinking it just another figment of my imagination. "Look at this," I said, rubbing my fingers over the rough edges of the carving. "I remember seeing this in the journal. It was drawn in one of the last entries." David leaned closer, his face pale. "That's not good. What does it mean?" "I don't know," I admitted, although unease curled tightly in my chest. "But it has to connect to everything." Just then, a branch snapped in the distance. We both froze, eyes darting towards the sound. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my throat dry. "Yeah," David replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "We should—" Before he could finish, something shifted in the trees behind us. My heart raced. "We need to go back," I urged, turning on my heel. We hurried down the path, my breath quickening with every step. The sense of being watched crept back, more intense than before. Even though I couldn't shake the feeling of being pursued, something in the shadows remained just out of sight. When we finally reached the clearing, my heart sank. The campsite was a chaotic mess. Our old belongings, now weathered and covered in dirt, were strewn around, as if someone had rifled through them in a hurry. My journal lay open among the ashes of the fire pit. "That's not good," David said, eyeing the mess warily. "What happened here?" I wasn't sure whether it was the fear of what we might find or the implications of it all, but I felt compelled to approach the journal. Its pages fluttered in the breeze as if beckoning me closer. As I knelt down to pick it up, I caught sight of a note tucked among the pages. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. "Did you find something?" David asked, peering over my shoulder. I unfolded the note slowly, and my heart plummeted as I read the words scrawled in frantic handwriting. "They are watching. Don't go back to the trees." A chill shot down my spine. Just then, a low growl erupted from the woods. I turned to David, my breath hitching in my throat. "We need to leave, now." The growl grew louder, closer. There was no denying it anymore. Whatever had haunted our past was here, and it was angry. I spun around, pulling David with me. Fear gripped my chest as I scanned the tree line, but nothing moved. "What was that?" I gasped. "I don't know, but we need to get to the car," David urged, looking over his shoulder nervously. His eyes flicked to the shadows that loomed at the edge of the clearing. We took off in a dead sprint toward the parking area, our footsteps thudding loudly in the eerie quiet. The growl echoed again, rippling through the trees. I could feel it vibrating in my bones. The feeling of being hunted was now real, and I had no idea what was following us. "Faster!" I shouted, adrenaline surging. My lungs burned, but I couldn't stop. I refused to look back. I could almost sense something gaining on us. When we finally reached the car, David fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. "Come on," I urged, my voice rising in desperation. The growl was joined by snapping branches, and the sound spurred him to hastily unlock the door. We dove into the front seat, slamming the doors behind us. "Lock the doors," I shouted, my heart pounding as he slammed his door shut. He quickly hit the locks, but I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on us. "What the hell was that?" David panted, staring wide-eyed at me. "I don't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But we can't stay here." With a shaking hand, I reached for the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I slammed it into gear, pulling away from the campsite as quickly as I could. The trees blurred past us, and I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something chase us down the road, but nothing appeared. Just the dense woods closing in behind us, a suffocating curtain of green. I let out a shaky breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "We need to figure out what's going on," I said. "That symbol on the tree, and the note, they must mean something. What if we shouldn't have come back?" David looked pained, glancing back at the path we'd just taken. "What if whatever's out there, it didn't want us here? I have to find out. Whatever's going on, it's connected to us," I insisted, my resolve hardening. "I can feel it." David's features twisted with worry. "But what if it's more than we understand? What if it gets worse?" I didn't know how to answer him. I thought of the note, the frantic handwriting warning us to stay away. But we had already crossed that line. There was no turning back now. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, slicing through the tension. I pulled it out, heart racing, and as I checked the screen, dread washed over me. A message from a number I didn't recognize, a single line of text. "You shouldn't have come back." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "David, we're not safe, not even in the car." Before I could say anything more, the engine sputtered and died. I turned the key, panic rising when nothing happened. "Shit," David exclaimed, slamming his hands against the steering wheel. It was too quiet. The woods felt like they were closing in around us. I glanced out the window and everything shifted. The trees, normally comforting, seemed to sway ominously. Then out of the corner of my eye I saw it, movement behind a tree. "David, look." But just as he turned, everything went dark. I blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden darkness. My heart raced, pounding in my ears as I reached for David. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice trembling. I can't see anything," he stammered, fear lacing each word. I fumbled for my phone, the faint glow illuminating the car's cramped interior. The engine was silent, but the shadows outside felt alive. I peered through the windshield, but all I saw was blackness. "Where are we?" I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. "Out of gas, I think," David replied, panic evident in his tone. "I told you we should have filled up before coming here." Just then, a low rustling outside made us both freeze. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my breath hitching. "Yeah," he whispered back, his eyes wide. I could see the outline of the trees, dark shapes pressing against the thin glow of my phone light. The rustling grew closer, shifting through the underbrush. Was it an animal? Or something worse? "I don't want this to be happening," David said, shaking his head frantically. "We should have left when we had the chance." My fingers were trembling as I texted back the mysterious number. "What do you want from us?" I sent, my thumb hitting send as fear bubbled to the surface. I didn't know if it was a good idea, but I had to ask. "Stop! Don't do that," David urged, fear creeping into his voice. "What if it's tracking us?" I didn't have time to respond before my phone buzzed again. Another message. "You're not supposed to be here." "That's not comforting," I muttered, glancing out into the darkness. The rustling stopped, replaced by an unsettling stillness. "Is it gone?" David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "No." My breath caught in my throat as a shape emerged from the trees. The moonlight caught the outline, something tall and hunched, its features obscured. I felt its gaze on us. "Don't move," I warned, my heart racing. Before I could process what was happening, the figure lunged at the car. I screamed, pressing myself against the seat. David slammed his palm against the window to get a better look. "What is that?" I couldn't answer because a deafening crash echoed off the metal frame as the figure hit the side of the car. I gripped the steering wheel, heart racing. My phone slipped from my hand, but I barely noticed, too consumed by the chaos outside. "Go, drive," David shouted, desperation making his voice rise, but the car was dead. I was trapped. Then the figure began to claw at the windows, its nails scraping against the glass. I couldn't breathe. I was frozen. And just when it felt like there was no escape, a blinding light flared from behind us. It cut through the darkness, illuminating the woods. "Look," David pointed. I turned, praying that it was someone coming to help us, but as the light grew, it revealed more horrifying silhouettes lurking around us. Figures all around, eyes glinting with something sinister. David and I exchanged frantic glances. What had we walked into? "Run," I whispered. But where could we go? The forest felt alive, and all paths were blocked. Then the clearing filled with an eerie chorus of growls, echoing through the trees. There was nowhere to hide. The growls grew louder, reverberating in my chest. My heart raced as I turned back to David. "We have to do something." He was wide-eyed, just as terrified as I was. "What can we do? The car won't start." I glanced around, taking in the silhouettes surrounding us. I tried to measure the distance to the woods on either side. They were closer than I thought. "We have to get out," I said, my voice shaking, but there was no time to question if it was the right choice. "Are you crazy?" David shouted, panic bubbling in his voice. "That thing is outside." I couldn't listen any longer. If we stayed, we were sitting ducks. The scratches on the windows grew more frantic. They were pushing against the glass. I couldn't stand the thought of it breaking in. I reached for the door handle, my fingers trembling. "It's now or never." Before David could protest, I yanked the door open. The sudden chill hit me like a wave, some mix of adrenaline and terror propelling me forward into the night. I glanced back at him, urging him to follow. "Wait. What if it's a trap?" he yelled, torn between fear and the instinct to survive. The figures were definitely closer now, their eyes gleaming in the light. "Do you want to find out?" I shot back, running toward the trees. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was about to become one of those urban legends. But I didn't have a choice. David hesitated for a beat longer, then slammed his door and sprinted after me, the sound of claws still scraping the car behind us. We ducked into the cover of the underbrush, sprinting deeper into the forest. Branches whipped against my skin, but I didn't care. All that mattered was putting as much distance between us and that thing as possible. "Which way?" David panted, looking around wildly as if the shadows themselves held the answer. I stopped long enough to catch my breath. I don't know." I looked down, glancing for any clearing or path. Then I saw it. A faint glow, distant but hopeful. "That way," I pointed, and we both took off toward the light. As we moved, the low growls faded into the background, but the fear screamed in my mind. With each step, my thoughts turned to the messages. Why were they tracking us? And what did they mean by not supposed to be here? David stumbled behind me, but I kept going. I had to keep going. I led him through the thickets, my instincts compelling me to escape whatever was pursuing us. Then, just when we thought we had found safety, a scream pierced through the trees, echoing around us. It wasn't just any scream. It was a human scream. The sound ricocheted off the trunks, freezing us in place like deer caught in headlights. "What was that?" David whispered, terror painted across his face. "I don't know." I took a step back instinctively, but we were too far to turn back now. More noises followed, the sound of crashing in the underbrush, heavy footsteps making their way toward us. I felt my breath hitch at the realization. We weren't alone. That's when I saw it emerging from the shadows. It wasn't just one figure. It was a group moving deliberately and stealthily toward the source of the scream. We were running out of time and options. "We need to get out of here," I muttered, fear tightening my chest. Just as I turned to grab David's arm, black shapes lunged from the trees. Terror unleashed its grip, and we ran blindly into the dark, praying whatever followed wouldn't catch us first. The darkness closed in around us as we fled, frantically weaving through the underbrush. My heart hammered in my chest. I focused on the faint glow ahead, but the branches clawed at me as if the forest itself wanted to keep us trapped. "Where are we going?" David gasped, breathless and panicked. "I don't know," I shot back, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. We were both terrified, and there wasn't time for reassurance. "Just keep running." We pushed forward. The sounds of the forest were a chaotic blend of rustling leaves and snapping twigs. It was hard to tell where the growls were coming from now, but the sense of being hunted hung in the air. Suddenly, I tripped over a root and fell to the ground, my palms scraping against the rough earth. I cursed under my breath, scrambling back to my feet as a low growl reverberated nearby. David grabbed my arm, and I could see fear etched into his eyes. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Before I could respond, the glow transformed into a flickering light. A lantern? I took a chance and pulled him toward it. If we could reach people, maybe we'd find safety. As we made our way closer, I spotted a clearing ahead. My heart soared with hope. But just as we reached the edge, a shiver ran down my spine. A horrible realization hit me like a brick. "David, wait!" I froze, staring at what lay before us. The clearing had a campfire, the flames flickering in a way that felt almost inviting. But the scene was wrong. The space was surrounded by tents that looked abandoned, flaps torn and blowing in the wind. Empty chairs circled the fire, remnants of a once vibrant gathering now turned into a ghostly tableau. What happened here?" David's voice was hoarse with confusion. I stepped into the clearing, the light casting strange shadows across the ground. "I don't know," I murmured, my unease boiling into every word. "But we can't stay here." Before I could turn around, the growls returned, closer this time. My heart dropped. We needed to leave, right now. I scanned the area for another escape route when a sudden noise made me jump. Something rustling in one of the tents. "Did you see that?" David whispered, pointing toward the movement. I nodded, fear tightening my throat. There was someone in there. My impulse was to run, but curiosity and terror tangled within me. What if it was someone who needed help? "Stay here," I whispered, taking a slow step toward the tent. The fabric urged me to come forward, but dread clawed at my mind. What if it was just a trap? "Don't," David hissed, panic making his voice rise. I hesitated, torn. Then the decision was made for me. A figure dashed out from behind the tent, drenched in shadows. "Run!" I yelled, turning on my heel to sprint back. As soon as we dashed back toward the thicket, I glanced once more at the clearing. The figure stood frozen, illuminated in the lantern light. A face. A hollow stare. It didn't belong to anyone. It was completely blank, like a mannequin brought to life. Before I could process the sight, David and I plunged back into the forest, heat rising in my chest. Whatever had once been there was now behind us. But the danger wasn't over. The growls intensified as I felt the unmistakable presence of something chasing us, too close for comfort. "Run faster," I urged, adrenaline pushing us both to our limits, but dread settled deep within me. It felt as if we were galloping toward a dark fate, one that we might not escape this time. We pushed ourselves deeper into the woods, the growls reverberating through the trees. I could feel David's warmth beside me as we trudged through the underbrush. My heart raced, pounding in rhythm with the pulse of dread that wrapped around my chest. "Where did that thing come from?" David gasped, still glancing back as though the frightening figure might reappear. "I don't know," I shouted, frustration and fear intertwining. "We just need to put as much distance between us and that clearing as we can." But even in our terror-fueled sprint, the relentless growls echoed nearer, like a predator closing in on its prey. Each sound twisted my stomach, every snap of a branch igniting a fresh wave of panic. Our senses were high alert, but clarity faded fast. The shadows seemed to morph around us, tightening as if we were being drawn into their clutches. Without thinking, I veered to the left, instinctively following the fading glow of dusk through an unfamiliar thicket. "This way," I urged David, but doubt ricocheted through my mind. As we surged forward, I caught a glimpse of movement among the trees, a dark shape trailing us too closely to be dismissed. My pulse quickened, and my legs burned with exertion. "It's right behind us. Keep running," I gasped, as if saying it would fortify my courage like a talisman. We weaved through the undergrowth, each step becoming a frantic leap between branches and roots. My mind raced with thoughts about the camping trip, the ghostly echoes of laughter, and that damned journal entry about seeing it again. A chill gripped my throat. What did it all mean? I shook my head. No time for questions now. Then we burst into a small clearing, completely out of breath. Panting, we scanned the area for places to hide or escape. I spotted an old, narrow cabin that looked abandoned, its door hanging ajar. In there, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming pull toward its darkness, like it might offer solace, or perhaps something else entirely. "Is that even safe?" David protested, his voice fraught with anxiety. I could see conflict set in his eyes, but desperation outweighed his hesitation. "Do you have a better idea?" I shot back, knowing full well that staying outside felt like an invitation to whatever hunted us. He hesitated, but then nodded, and we dashed toward the cabin. Once inside, we pulled the door slowly, careful not to let an electric creak give away our hiding spot. The dim light barely illuminated stacks of dusty crates and a few battered pieces of furniture, a forgotten remnant of life long gone. "How do we know that thing won't find us inside?" David whispered, leaning against the door. I shook my head, unsure. "I don't know, but if it has a way to know we're here, it's already too late." For a moment we shared an anxious silence, hearts thundering as we listened for any sign of pursuit. The sounds of the forest had hushed, leaving an unsettling stillness hanging heavy around us. Then a new sound caught my attention, something rustling just outside the cabin. My blood ran cold. It sounded too deliberate, too cautious. I shot a glance at David. "Do you hear that?" His eyes widened, and we both breathed silently, straining to listen. The noise stopped, and in that brief moment, the stillness returned, wrapping around us with an almost deafening weight. Just then, my cell phone buzzed in my pocket. I felt my chest tighten at the thought of what this could mean, remembering that last message. "You shouldn't have come back." I hesitated before pulling it out, dread pooling in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling it would only complicate things. David's growing fear caught my attention. "Don't check it. It might just draw attention," he hissed, but I was already swiping to unlock the screen. A single message from the unknown number read, "You're not safe. It knows where you are." Before I could react, the door shuddered violently, shaking in its frame as something on the other side slammed against it. David's eyes widened. I stepped back involuntarily, heart hammering. "It's here," I gasped, suddenly aware that we had nowhere to run. With a chilling realization, we locked eyes, knowing this might be it. The door rattled again, and the old wood creaked ominously, threatening to splinter under the pressure. We were no longer hiding from whatever hunted us. It had found us. "Get ready," I shouted, feeling a surge of adrenaline. I grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor as a makeshift weapon. David followed suit, grabbing an old baseball bat propped against a wall. The rattling grew fiercer, the hinges creaking. I braced myself for impact, heart racing as uncertainty merged with adrenaline-fueled resolve. Then, just as I was certain the door would burst open, the pressure suddenly stopped. An eerie silence descended, wrapping around us. "What happened?" David whispered, his voice raw with dread. I glanced at the door, gripping the pipe tighter. "I don't know. But it feels like something is watching." In that paralyzing moment, I could feel it suffocating the air, leaving us alone with our frantic breaths. My instincts screamed that we shouldn't be here, shouldn't have come back. But here we were, caught in the web of dread I couldn't unravel. As the quietness stretched, I found myself listening for something, anything, that might reveal its presence. But all that filled the air was silence, heavy and solid. And somewhere in that chilling yet peaceful void, I couldn't ignore a single truth. Whatever it was, whatever it wanted from us, there were still questions left unanswered. And I was certain, despite the calamity we had stumbled into, we were being led deeper into chaos. Whatever lay ahead in the forest, I felt we would face it together, our fate unknowable still.